Hello, I'm Tom Compton, and welcome to Pursuing the Muse. This week, I'm thrilled to be joined by the talented Jessica Willis Fisher. Jessica is a gifted singer-songwriter and fiddle player. She has an acclaimed new album out now called Blooming, which is the follow-up to her debut Brand New Day. She's also the author of the powerful memoir Unspeakable, which chronicles the domestic abuse of her childhood. In our conversation, we discuss her unique artistic journey, the profound inspirations behind her music, and how she uses her voice to speak truth and help others.
Love is healing my heart, love is healing my soul, love is healing my body, love is making me whole, love is teaching me here, love is showing me how, love is taking me higher, love is healing me now. But in the spring, there's no one that can match me. I come alive, and white is all you see. Breathe me in, and all the winter's over. If I had wooden roots and branches, bark and blooms, I'd be a dogwood tree. You could build a house on the top of a hill. I'd bake the pies, put them out on the sill. When the sunlight's hitting just right, we would have our fill. Living in our house on the top of a hill.
Hello, it's Tom Compton again with Pursuing the Muse, and I am so excited today. We have Jessica Willis Fisher joining us. Jessica, how are you doing?
Hello, I am good. It's a sunny, warm day in Nashville today.
I think it's warm everywhere.
Just about.
I think we've had a record of 90-degree days this year up in Chicago, so it's been sweltering.
It's been, it's funny. I don't have too many memories of Chicago being that hot, but I was born there and lived there for the first 9 years of my life, and the winters, they left an impression. So I think my blood has thinned living in the South for sure. Yeah. Chicago likes the extremes. So
yeah. Okay. I was going to mention, I saw a clip of you on TV, and
what?
Your speaking voice, I was like, Jessica doesn't sound like she's from Nashville, so that explains a lot when you say you grew up in Chicago for that first chunk of years.
Yes, and both my parents were born in Chicago. I think there's where you lived, of course, but then, the accents of your parents and caregivers and family. And Nashville's a town that has a lot of folks from elsewhere. There aren't so many, like Nashville, there's a Nashville accent that's a little bit like not quite as Southern, and that's very prominent as soon as you get outside of, the city. But I think there's certain words that you can even hear the like Chicago, the ba kind of come out, but not all words. So
Right.
It's a mixture.
Right. The over by there kind of stuff. The mic did.
Yes.
Yeah. It's hard to hide when I'm traveling. But let's jump into the music. This new record, Blooming, is so good. And I'm going to admit that I'm late to the party because it wasn't even 2 weeks ago that I knew about your music, and I saw a review on Blue Sky. I admit I've left Twitter in protest of what Elon Musk represents. So I'm over on Blue Sky now, and I saw a review that said that this record, Blooming, could be the best record of the year. And I trusted the voice, and I checked it out, and right away I loved it. So congratulations on this new album.
Well, thank you so much. Generally speaking, I'm coming from a place where I really, really care about the art that I'm making. It's very personal to me. And this record, I'm super proud of, super excited that it's out. It was a long time in the making, and had a few people that just really believed in making it with me. My producer, Ben, my father-in-law and manager, Pete, and some great folks played on it and everything. And I love each one of the songs, and I could talk about them for hours, what they represent, what they mean to me. But it is extra special when somebody else, lets me know how it makes them feel or what they like. So I am excited to find a new champion in you. And so glad you saw that review. So yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I'll say, I mean, instantly with the podcast and listening to this music, I was like, oh my gosh, I've got to find out how I can talk to Jessica. And I reached out and found your manager, and it all worked out that you could do this. And then afterwards, I started doing more research, and it was only after the point where I loved the album on its own legs that I learned of your backstory, because you have a memoir that talks about your childhood and all the trauma and things that shouldn't happen to anybody that you endured in your childhood. And it really took my appreciation to a whole nother level, because not only is this great art for as it stands itself, it's coming from a place that just makes it even a little more extra special.
I really appreciate you saying that. And, the singer and the songwriter and the fiddle player kind of loves to hear that the art would have an appeal separate from, knowing a background story. Like, I think context matters very much. At the same time, if you go in and take a meeting with a publisher, they want to hear the song and they want it to move them. An audience, walking by a stage at a festival, you don't necessarily get the chance to say, here's a 10-minute, summary of my life and what all these things mean to me. And, you want your art to stand on its own 2 feet. And part of my background being we can get into it as much as you want to or don't want to, but I was in a family band for many years, and there were so many of us, and there were so many other elements to the show and the brand that sometimes there was this question of, are people just along for, to watch the circus, or are they really being moved by the art? My first record that I did, believed in that very much. That was extremely meaningful to me. And we decided to put out that album before my memoir. So it was really the first chance that my voice and my writing and my music had that chance to stand on its own. So again, just providing a little more context to why that matters a lot. But I think I don't see, I can't really separate my art from my life and my processing of my experiences. And, I want to take the things that I experience and turn them into something beautiful. And Blooming is just the latest version of that.
Right. Yeah. It's wonderful. And I think I saw in print somewhere a description that Brand New Day, your first album, the debut, was about survival and starting over, and that Blooming is more a record about thriving.
Yeah, I like to, it's fun to talk long form and ramble, and I certainly do that. But if I were to sum it up in, a word or a phrase or a sentence, that's probably the most succinct difference, but also continuation. Like, that's how they relate to each other, and that's what's different about them. Surviving versus thriving.
Yeah, and I think that, in my own humble opinion, I think Blooming, Brand New Day is a great record, and it was new to me as well. But there is something really special about Blooming, because from where you've come from, the hope and the optimism that it brings, and I think especially in this day and age where our country's at, I think we need this, it's perfect timing for a world that's kind of hurting on its own, and you've got your own hurt, and we all have our different stuff going on. But this record is really, really special.
I don't think I certainly have found that life or healing or the journey, however you kind of want to talk about it, it just never really unfolds in a straight line that I've found. It's cyclical, or it's winding and unexpected, and you're doing well, and then all of a sudden you feel like you've maybe not reverted, but a new challenge, something is raising its hand and asking you to pay attention to it, and the work goes on. And so I think being honest, one of the songs on the record is called Honest, and to me that's a gentle, optimistic, grounded song that says, yes, I'm an optimistic person, but it's coming more from the place of, I shouldn't really be here anymore. I got to a place where I wasn't sure I could keep going. I wasn't sure I was going to survive the challenges in front of me. And when you've gotten onto the other side of something so life-changing and life-threatening, it really, hopefully, can unlock a new appreciation for every second, every day, and the potential of, moving from, yes, the energy of starting over, but also investing time. I think when I think of Brand New Day, that's the name of the first record, and starting over, there's something, immediate and important about that. And blooming was sort of like saying, well, a lot of good things take time, and I found that what I was writing about and what I was celebrating was just the growth that happens with more years, more life under your belt, coming into one's own. And that's what growth and healing and thriving has meant to me. And it has included ongoing challenges. And to your point about our greater, societal issues right now, I have found this to be a very difficult time, I think. Personally, I think there's a lot of things going on that in my mind takes me back to a place that I had to escape from. A lot of things that were part of the system, my religion, my family, things that were really unhealthy and toxic and was keeping me from health and growth and safety and honesty. And there's a real question of why, I fought so hard to get out of that. And I feel some of those things encroaching on me, on people that I love, on the life that I've built. And, blooming, there's all this, nature imagery and flowers and all these things. And sometimes I've looked at it and been like, this is a flower in a sidewalk crack. That it's like, it feels a bit against the odds. Like some of these days I would rather curl up in a corner, but I think that this energy that I want to try to stay connected to and tap into does have, like you said, a lot of optimism and that, that's just that's not coming from what most people would say naivete. It's coming from gratitude and a commitment to moving forward past really hard things.
Yeah, there's definitely a maturity, and it's not a naivete like you're saying, because even in a song like Honest, it's got the optimism but it's tempered by the realism. I'll be as honest as I can. I mean, that's such a great line, and I think having the balance that's in there where it's got the optimism, but it's also kind of vulnerable and maybe looking both ways a little bit and not sure. I think it builds to something that a mass audience can relate to.
I think the vulnerability. Sorry. There might be
no, go ahead.
Delay in us talking, by the way. I think I'm realizing. But I think part of it is acknowledging the vulnerability. I think as we live life and we grow older, we can grow wiser and we can learn from our experiences and let that give us confidence. And, at the same time, hopefully we're realizing, hey, I swear sometimes the more I learn, the more I realize how much I don't know. But holding both of those things at the same time, holding the things that I'm confident about, things that I've learned through blood, sweat, and tears, and that I don't feel the need to prove to anyone else, versus an openness and an acknowledgement that I'm still figuring it out and it's okay not to have every answer. That really flies in the face of my upbringing, which was, not necessarily the same from day one to the day I got out of that system. There was a progression, but at least by the end, it was extremely fundamentalist, extremely black and white, extremely authoritarian, extremely toxic. And I think it was a lot of those things for a very long time. I was just young enough and innocent enough that I didn't know any better. And it took a while for me to get any sort of sense of self or standard outside of my bubble that I was in to choose something different for myself. But the drive to have an answer for everything or have the whole world be black and white and always have an answer and always be at war and always, that there's a rebellion, that's a softening and an embracing of vulnerability, and instead of something that you don't know being a reason to fear, letting it be something that conjures curiosity and openness. I believe I have found the world to be more beautiful than it is terrible. But that doesn't mean that there aren't some really, really terrible things there. It's just a commitment to try to add to the beauty instead of the fear or the darkness. So obviously I could get really, I was going to say in my head, but just, these things have deep meaning and deep symbolism, I think, for me.
Yeah, absolutely. When you say there's more goodness than darkness in the world, if that's the only thing that we take away from the record, then that's not bad. But there's a whole lot more. But I think it's a message, like you're talking about, how the culture might trigger some trauma for you, the way the world is operating these days.
Mm-hmm.
It's your music is helping to temper that. So that's great. And let's talk about the.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I'd love to, because
I was going to say,
ramble wherever, but what are some things that you're more curious about with some questions? Yeah.
Oh, I was going to say, the record itself, it starts with Healing, which I think sets the tone. It's like a big anthem, and it's got this great message of like, love is healing me now. And it's the perfect way to draw in to the record. But I also, to me, I dabble in songwriting myself as a kind of a hobbyist. Yeah. The second song, Dogwood, is like it's like a textbook example of great songwriting craft. It's such a wonderful song. It defines the world of, like, with the verses like, I'm not this, I'm not a cedar, I'm not a redwood. And then you bring in, but I am a dogwood. And I tell you what, from the first listen to that song, I just in love with it as it's a gem of a song just from the craft perspective.
Thank you. I had actually, that was a funny one because I had a bunch of different inspirations kind of coming together. Everything from the word dogwood by itself, of course, representing a tree that's very common here in the South. And specifically for me and my childhood, when we moved from Chicago, I was about to turn 9, and I had my first, southern spring experience, and it was breathtaking. We lived in the suburbs of Chicago, and it was gray, and spring was not a fun time because it was basically just a continuation of winter, and the snow went from being white to being gray, and the cement was gray, and the concrete was gray, and but coming in late March, and then my birthday's in April, the dogwoods, first of all, lots of different blooming trees and wildflowers and everything, but the piece of property that we moved to actually had belonged to Randy Travis, and who we didn't know who that was at the time because we didn't know anything about country music, but it was called Dogwood Farms, and there were like dozens and scores of beautiful dogwoods, pink, white. So those were just my favorite. And it always felt like that was like a birthday present to me when they would bloom. So I knew one day I would I'd write a fiddle tune named Dogwood or something. And the song, I'm blanking on the order. Maybe it's the next song on the album Build a House. I had started writing that song and had used the word dogwood in that song. And as I kept writing, I just felt that wasn't right. I was like, that's too much of a throwaway. I would actually love to extract that out. And I had been talking about traveling and everything, but sort of an idea of no matter where you travel or where you're going, you know where you want to end up. And I was singing, "You can bury me by the dogwood tree." And you'll know if you listen to Build a House, I kept that melody, but totally changed what the words were. And then I kept circling dogwood. And I was like, well, what is this song about? What do I want to say about this? And I think sometimes when we're trying to figure out who we are, what we want to say, sometimes a fun tool is to say, okay, well, what am I not? And that you can see that's where the verse started coming from is, okay, well, in order to talk about what the dogwood is, what the dogwood symbolizes, what it means to me, how about, okay, now it's about figuring out who we are and acknowledging that, in a world of comparison, in a world that wants to tell you to be big or strong, or you have to look a certain way or be a certain way, to be oneself unapologetically in all of our parts and all parts of our story, to claim them all, even the dark chapters or the wounded parts, and to say, this is part of what makes me and my story beautiful as well. So it just kind of followed the inspiration that way, and then really wanted the song to stand on its own. It's one that I play solo on guitar a lot because I think the building of that song, it's a strong song. It's a song about vulnerability and strength, and I love that all those things come together.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Did you have like a vocal melody come to you first with that, or was it the guitar part? Because it's a strong guitar part.
First off, big disclaimer is I'm not playing the guitar on any of the record. I very, very lucky to, obviously I'm in Nashville. There's amazing players here, world-renowned players.
You got one or two guitar players down there.
Yeah, there's a handful. Chances are your waiter can play the guitar better than you if you're visiting Nashville. But Brian Sutton is known for everything from playing on top 40 country. If you hear like an acoustic instrument taking a solo, a mandolin or a banjo or a guitar, fair chance it could be Brian Sutton, but he has such amazing chops in, bluegrass and rolling over into the Irish stuff, which was my main inspiration and musical heritage, and he knows the stuff there, and he's off playing with Bela Fleck or Yo-Yo Ma or somebody, so he's just a virtuoso, really. And just always delighted when he can be somebody that I can work with. And my producer, Ben, again, shout out to him, because he, of course I had heard of Brian Sutton, but he has a good working relationship with him and respect between them. When Ben is like, hey, there's this project, that's how I could go from, wow, I really like his playing, to, okay, he's in the room with me with his band, laying down this amazing stuff. That guitar solo on Dogwood, speaking of, he's playing all the guitars on that song, but I was pretty sure I wanted an acoustic guitar solo. And if you're familiar with Tony Rice, very well-known, just beloved bluegrass fixture, both on guitar and singing. He has a song called Shadows, and I love this song. Alison Krauss did a version of it as well. And it gets me to this day. I love singing it and listening to it. And there's a gorgeous, heart-rending, super expressive guitar solo that Tony Rice does. And so I was like, okay, this is the vibe. And I remember Ben and I Brian Sutton took like 2 takes, and he was like, how's this? How's this? And we were just like, that is the most gorgeous thing we've ever heard. Perfect. And that's the take.
Yeah, 1 take.
Sorry, tea break over here.
So the guitar's great. So how did you present? Did you present the melody and then he kind of ran with it?
Oh, okay. So I was backing up myself on guitar. I would never claim to be a guitar player. Like, you would never hire me to play guitar in your band, ever. But I can, back myself up. I tend to write songs most commonly on the guitar. Sometimes it will be fiddle, sometimes it will be piano or something else. Find a Lover started on banjo, which I do not play. But it was sitting at a friend's house, and I picked it up and went, this sounds fun. So, for example, Dogwood, Honest, let me think, Seeds. So those are songs on the record where I came to Ben and then the studio band with work tapes that was just me on guitar and me singing. So I have the chords, I have, the basic arrangement, and, those songs were a little bit more stripped back in the recording. So, Brian takes the guitar part and he just makes it better all around. Maybe does a more complex chords and or complex, picking where I was doing a basic strum or something. And then for songs on the album like Healing or One of a Kind or Build a House, I had made demos that were not super high quality, but allowed me to get across, hey, I want to stack the harmonies this way, or I want a very specific beat or rhythm. Build a House was really fun for me rhythmically, and it took me a little while to crack it. I had started writing the song, but I knew I wanted it to have, coming from the Irish music that I played growing up, there's a timing called jig, and you'll hear people say, oh, dance a jig or something, and that's 6/8 timing. So it's ducka da ducka da ducka da ducka da ducka da da, and it's kind of bouncy, rolly ducka da da, and I wanted to have that under da 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 ducka da ducka da. So I figured out how to do it. I was like hitting the back of my guitar and then pitched it down in GarageBand, and then did a picking pattern on top of that. And it was 2 guitars overlaid. And again, the quality was not great. But when we went into the studio, I was able to say, hey, because you could have done like you could have done all sorts of different rhythms and different interpretations. But when I knew I had a specific vision that I wanted the band to try to go for, I would try to put the time in to arrange it out, try out the harmonies, figure out the arrangements. Something like Find a Lover has a whole tune in it where there's a whole section that's dedicated to the fiddle and the mando and the banjo playing that tune. So, I would have that documented. So that really helped us make the most of the time in the studio.
Oh, that's wonderful. Are they able to catch it first time through with the demo that you bring them? Or is there some sort of refinement process of they kind of miss it, but you hone them back in or anything like that going on?
They're like aliens. It's like completely crazy what they do. And it's not just like the 4 or 5 guys that we happen to have in the room. There are a lot of amazing folks in town, the session players. It blows my mind. They can hear something and yes, all of the above. Like they are they're like memorizing it and then they're like interpreting it. And so little time has to be spent usually adjusting. And I will say, like, that's just one way of recording. There are many different ways or styles or approaches. And I think I am interested in whether it's my next record or sometime in the future, kind of doing a different approach where I have more time with the players that have chops better than mine. And it's not just, wow, that's beautiful, put it down. Like a little bit more like, okay, that's cool, but what else? And you just, if you have a day or two in the studio where you've booked these people, you are trying to get everything as quickly as possible and make you're kind of, the clock is really sort of like driving it. Right. And that's why doing the work ahead of time to enable them to, because you don't want to say, yeah, that's fine when it's not really the vision or nobody's going to be happy with it. But the great news is nothing bad is coming out onto the tape with them, coming out of their fingers and their ears and all of that. It's beautiful, great stuff. And, for me, all the time that I was writing, making art in the context of my family, there were a lot of things that were fraught about that. I wrote the majority of the songs, not all the songs. Some of the tunes, I was the lead singer. So there was a lot of my artistic DNA in that. But I also did not have, the control. If there was a song and Dad said, I don't like that, then we couldn't record it. If Dad said, I want someone else to sing it or I want you to change it, there was no creative freedom ultimately. Or, a lot of production choices that either I would have done differently or my brother would have done differently. And, any band that you're in, you're going to have to navigate those things. And being a solo artist, I don't want to put my name to something or take my songs and have them be made in a way that I don't like. But there's a lot of room for collaboration. Like, I'm not here to micromanage the bass part, and that's what's great because I can come and I can do my part. And I felt like it was this way with the first album, but like I was saying, both the first album and this one, there was a mix of songs where it was kind of a blank slate. Like, here's the chords, here's the guitar part that I play, here's what I sing. Let's envision it with the band. And it feels like magic because it's like, how can you do that? You just made something up and it's beautiful. And on the other ones where I was more detailed and I want this to happen, I want that to happen, they're really good at interpreting something that you already have. So very, very impressive. And I cannot do what they do.
So it sounds like you had like the band leader skill in you from what you did with the Willis clan. Yeah, at the same time, there was someone with this veto power. So as you're emerging in a studio, working on your solo material, was it a process for you to like gain self-confidence that there wasn't somebody behind your shoulder anymore?
So here, I'll say this. So the day... we didn't get everything in one day, but for my first record, there was a day that we started first thing in the morning and we went to pretty late in the evening, and it was a marathon of a day. I was completely spent. I was so excited. I was overjoyed. I had cried. I had danced. Everything was happening so whirlwind fast. And I was unsure whether it would be a negative experience, a mixed experience. Really, it was a good slightly overwhelming experience, but at the end of the day, I just started crying, and I was like, this is what it can be like. Again, many different ways to make music. There's not just one way. And this was, a fast track that I had never really experienced before. They were strangers. I had never met these people before the day that we were recording, that first day of recording for the first record. But I trusted the producer, Ben, and he helped shepherd us all through that. And it was just such a contrast to all the anxiety and all of the trauma, like big T trauma of my experience with my family. And it was logistically very different too, because we didn't have a world-class studio that we were using to make our family band records. A lot of it we were doing ourselves or with our cousin or with dad, and we were teaching ourselves and figuring things out, a lot of trial and error. And we had one isolation room where we would take turns layering our parts. So we weren't ever in a spot really where all of us could play like we did live on stage or in rehearsal and then capture that at the same time. It was a lot of metronome and layering, and sometimes you layer all of that and then it would sound dead because it didn't, the way that you make the art can have a huge, has a huge impact on your final product. And then just from the rehearsals, the performances, the recording, sometimes we would think we were loving what we had, and dad would come in and we would get raked over the coals because he didn't like something, or we would go to bed liking what we had recorded, and the morning dad had come and changed a lot of things and sent them out the door, and we were like, wait, that's not what we wanted. And anyway, there's a lot of us involved and everybody had different experiences, but it was weird because I really fell in love with writing, with expressing, with like telling the truth. But it was always had to be very guarded too, because there were certainly things that I was feeling that I felt like I wasn't allowed to express, or I would test the waters. And here's a very kind of unique example, but we were having a rehearsal with the family band, and dad was unhappy with my fiddle playing, and he didn't think it was good enough, and he wanted me to be more aggressive and just play better, whatever. And he picked up a drumstick and threw it across the room in my face. And I couldn't move out of the way in time, but I was able to pull my fiddle up in front of my face just by instinct. And unfortunately, it meant that my fiddle basically exploded. The drumstick hit the scroll, the head. And it was scary and it was devastating, and it was like, oh my God, my dad just tried to hurt me, physically. And oh no, my instrument is broken. And I had nicknamed my fiddle Sadie. And a little bit after that, I wrote this song called Sadie, and it was about a girl who died named Sadie, and that Sadie wouldn't be singing anymore. And really, it was a song to mourn my fiddle, which dad had broken. And it was weird because I thought, well, I get in trouble for writing this song, even though it was, fictionalized. It was mixed in. It wasn't dad threw a stick and hit my fiddle and now I'm sad. It was a fictionalized version, but I was pouring, this feeling out and naming it. And he knew exactly what I was doing. And we ended up recording that and performing that. And it was super weird which things, be like, sure, we can use that. Basically, if dad thought he could use it, it would get used. And sometimes for better or for worse. Anyway, so it's just very different now to be making art that doesn't have to be cloaked in plausible deniability. Like it's now a thing of this new artistic and current life that I have that I can say every single word of this is true. And it means that much more to me. And when people resonate with it, it's that much more gratifying and fulfilling.
Yeah, like I can only imagine that from the experience in the past, like what you're getting in the studio now is almost like breathing oxygen after having to breathe through, some sort of mask or something, it's
it's a
just freeing.
reclaiming. Yeah, freeing, reclaiming. And it made me realize the different times where I was like unsure if music was healthy for me or if I could figure out a way of doing it, but not go backwards, like not go back to that dark place, not go back to a place where this is so anxiety filling and this is so hard. And in the end, I think the struggle was this helped me for so many years. It was like the only therapy that I really kind of had, even though I wouldn't have had the vocabulary to call it that. And our religious worldview beliefs did not condone, the idea was you need to pray harder or, be spanked or something to get you back in the good graces. And that's all. It wasn't talk about what's actually going on or process feelings or speak up and get help, like none of those things. And so music, I really feel like was a lifesaver for many years. But then it just got the wound, it was like too tender. To make music is to express and to feel. And it was too hard there at the end. And so I stopped writing. I couldn't really perform much more with the family. I was starting to cry on stage during shows, so it was not good. And when I got out, I just walked away from all of that. And it was a few years before it came back around. And it came back with the writing first. I had a lot of things to say. And it was going to be scary to finally let them come out, but also really healing. And to reclaim that and think, I'm not going to let music or my voice, literally and figuratively, my story, I'm not going to let this be, a casualty. I'm going to figure out a way to take this back and reclaim it and do it in a healthy way. So that's how I think of this now.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, you're calling to mind something that was in the book Unspeakable towards the end, where it blew me away that you said you had performed at the Grand Ole Opry 59 times as the family band. And then after your time away and refining your voice, you came back as a solo artist for your 60th time on stage. That's crazy in itself that to have been at it's nerve-wracking to think about being at the Grand Ole Opry once, and then you've got this presence there, and now you have to go back as a reinvented kind of version of yourself.
That's
what were your emotions there coming back like that?
I mean, that's sort of what, and you're doing a good job there. My sweet father-in-law and manager always tries to remind me to actually name drop my albums and my and my book, because I'll just have a whole conversation and never even let people know what it's called. But you just mentioned there, my memoir is called Unspeakable, and it was just called Untitled for a long time. It was just my therapy homework, and it was me just putting down things for the sake of my own sanity and processing and healing. And at some point, it turned into a manuscript, and then it turned into a draft, and then it turned into a book, a published book, all these things. And at some point, realizing that the thread that ran throughout, I had said so much. I was like the lead singer, the spokesperson, but I wanted to clarify what, there was always going to be a People magazine interview talking about how much I thought my dad was so great. And that was what was going to be on the record in perpetuity unless I decided to face that, confront that, clear the record. So there was sort of like a moral calling and obligation that I felt to myself in order to move forward, to face those things. to reclaim the art, sort of everything that we were just talking about. And, the Opry specifically, that's where I met my husband, that, my father-in-law manager that I keep talking about, he ran the Opry for 18 years and was working there when we met. And, there were people all along those hardest years that were spots of joy, that were like that flower in the sidewalk crack that gave me courage to keep going, or showed me a little glimpse of something good, something to keep going towards. And I decided, in the context of the book, to have that be how the book ended, because how do you end a memoir of someone who's still fairly, I feel like I'm just getting started with my life, at least I especially felt that then. I know I'm a few more years down the road here, and life continues to be very interesting in how it's unfolding, but, just realizing...
Right, you can have multiple memoirs.
Yeah, I'm working on a novel now, and I started another memoir. Who knows? Don't hold me to any promises on what may come in the future in that regard, but, the title Unspeakable, we were going from something that stretches back as early as I can remember. My dad was abusive in pretty much every way a person can be, and some of my earliest memories included that. And for all the things that I said or used my voice to say, that was the thing I felt like I could never find the words for, find the courage for, find the opportunity. And the book was the journey of going from, I don't know how to talk about this, to here I am talking about this, and I've survived, and I'm moving forward, and this will always be part of my story, but I get to decide what to do with my voice and my story and my life from here on out. And there's a lot to learn, but this is a very important, necessary step. And so that final scene there was just full of many emotions. It was nostalgic to be back. I was curious and maybe worried that maybe some hard things would come up, but it really was just joy, and a lot of gratitude, because it felt like that place, whether it was Pete specifically or the wonderful sound people at the Opry, for them to make me feel like family. And ideally, our families are safe places, and mine was not. And the truth is we can find and make family at any point in our life. And I think my musical peers and friends and community and family has been a huge part of how I can even be here today, because I've gotten so much amazing support, not just the outlet of the music itself, but the other people in this community with me. And there's a lot of people that have the hardest parts of my stories. I'm not unique in the challenges that I've had. Abuse is extremely common, sexual abuse, childhood abuse. But what can be harder is to find that support, whether it's monetary support to go get therapy, safe communities, safe places. So I want to be a part of that, whether it's through making art that can inspire and be positive and tap your toe, make you laugh, make you cry, help you feel seen, express something that you feel but didn't know how to say, all the way up to going and sharing my story and doing advocacy work and fundraising and things like that. So all of those things together just make for a lot of different avenues for me to have a really deep purpose, I think, with all of these things together.
Right. Yeah. It's a lot to just to be able to appreciate that there's somebody who's gone through this and has reclaimed their voice. And that alone can be inspiring for somebody who's in that dark place and doesn't know which way to turn yet. To see an example, it's like, with the 4-minute mile, nobody could break the 4-minute mile, and then some runner does it, and now it's commonplace. It's like you need the example, and you've done such a great job of like putting yourself out there, and you really should be applauded for that. It's just wonderful.
Well, thank you. And I don't want to diminish or dismiss the efforts or the good choices that I have made, but I do think that it's really eye-opening how well just about anybody can do when they are believed, they are supported, they are funded, they are, people are really resilient. And I think sometimes people are a little they're like, oh, kids are resilient. And that's almost an excuse for letting bad things go on. I think we are really affected by trauma. Like, I will, till the day I die, be struggling with the fallout and the ramifications of things that happened to me when I was so little. But it's both and, right? It doesn't mean that there aren't beautiful things that are going to come along with that struggle. And I think the song Honest specifically, I remember feeling the need to write that because I was having a particularly hard day. I had been booked to come speak and give my survivor story. And you're sort of there to just inspire and say, yeah, like, I went through this and I survived and I'm here, and hopefully motivate people, depending on who I'm speaking to and for what cause. It's like, I hope that you will help monetarily today to fund, the forensic interviews for child victims of sex crimes in your community. I mean, talk about some really meaningful stuff. I'm always like, I am there. If I can do that, if I can help make that happen, I will sing a song, I will tell a story, I will give a talk. But sometimes it's kind of, I've been calling it trauma roulette. Sometimes it just gets you, sneaks up and it hits you on the head. And I'm kind of back in that place where I'm really shaky and I just I know I'm safe, but my body remembers, my emotions. It is taking me back to that place, and it takes a toll. And so I still have a lot of good news to share, but I was like, how do I keep my integrity and stay congruent and stay honest while saying I have so much to be grateful for, and I'm really doing the best I ever have been, and it still sucks sometimes. And so that, that's where that bridge line, I'd like to say it's one straight line, but it's not. You'll circle back again. And healing just doesn't happen in a straight line, and it's okay to not be okay. And some days we're going to be the strong ones and we're going to help other people. And then some days we're going to need to lean on our friends and the experts and family, just to get through until the next, break in the clouds. So, I go ahead and turn to my own song sometimes, because it's like one part of me knows that a different part of me needs to hear that, or needs to be able to. There's things that we can say, but I think the beauty of music is somehow when we pair just a dry line to all of a sudden a melody or a harmony or a beautiful production, it can calm us on that deeper level. It can make us feel seen, and it is just healing on another dimension. So that's what we're trying to do.
Kind of a mirror.
That's what we're trying to do.
Have you experienced you're writing a song and it's coming out? Do you find that you even learn something about yourself that you didn't realize until the song has emerged and is sitting there?
100%. 100%. I've had so many different versions of that. In fact, I've had songs that I wrote back during my family band days that it was only after my dad was arrested, after I was out of that situation, that I was able to fully kind of acknowledge and face what I was expressing at that time. It's interesting, you can actually go back to one of the first songs that I ever wrote that we ended up recording as a family band. It's called Come With Me, and I didn't write it by myself. My dad was pushing me to write songs, and I was resisting. And you never knew. Sometimes you could, not do what he said, and you wouldn't get in that much trouble, but sometimes it would bring down a very violent response. So, a lot of walking on eggshells, and it was one of my sisters and me and him, and he was trying to get us to write this song. So it came out as a love song. It's called Come With Me. And what's interesting is if you go back and listen, there's like lines about chains and trying to escape and get free. And it's like a call to someone or something to say, please come take me away from here. And it's just very sad, insightful. There's something endearing about looking at the ways that I was brave, or I did understand, but also was doing what I could to survive at the time. And that required me to try to keep my head down in many ways. So yeah, I have lots of times where there's a famous, I don't know if it's Virginia Woolf or somebody, there's some famous author that said something like, how do I know what I think until I see what I write? So I definitely have that experience frequently.
Can you feel a contrast in the way processing some of the dark stuff differs from how your healthy relationships now influence your songs? Do they feel like they're coming from the same place, but maybe a different side of a coin?
You broke up a little bit there, actually, for the first time, but I think I grasped what you were saying. I think what I will say is I have felt a difference there was a desperation and almost a darkness in the experience of writing at some of my hardest times. And I have taken the view that music is an amazing tool. Any type of art expression, I think for anybody, whether you are trying to survive a really tough time, whether you just want to have more richness in your life, I think looking for some sort of creative, artistic expression, whether it's sculpting, journaling, writing, singing, playing some instruments, dancing, like all of these things I think are natural to us as humans in some way. It's a different thing to try to be like really good at a craft or a skill and try to pursue excellence and then try to like make it your career and or compete. Like you can do it for your own mental health and enjoyment, and there's different combinations of that. But I think I was desperate because I didn't have other tools in my toolbox, and I've realized that sometimes you don't need to write a song, you need to go to therapy. You need actual help. You need to get to a safe house. So that was interesting because I think sometimes that I called on music, I don't do that anymore because it actually isn't the most healthy response. Like if I need to actually have a conversation, it's when we write the letter that we don't send. Maybe that's a good exercise for us and it's a good psychological, emotional thing. But sometimes we just need to talk to the person, or we need to talk to the police, or we need to actually take a step. So it was interesting to kind of come back to music and be like, okay, the relationship has changed, but hopefully it's a better thing. So it's not, only in my darkest moments that I am, coming to you, asking you to save my life yet again. And like specifically with love songs, it was very hilarious to me that once I was married and in an actual healthy, albeit still new relationship, I really struggled writing the love song on my first record that I wrote, Hopelessly Madly, because I was so overwhelmed with, who are any of us to try to sum up what love is in a little 3-minute ditty? But we've been trying for as long as humans have been here. We're always coming back to it. We're always trying to sum up, why does it feel like we're the only ones who have ever understood this? Why do, and you can sort of get intimidated by it, but I would write a line and I would just start crying because I was like, it's so beautiful. And like the overwhelming reality of the experience versus making up, tapping on a longing or an imagination or a hope, but actually articulating a reality that I was living and didn't ever think I would be able to have. And that was a very different experience for me. Wrote a few more love songs for this record, but I find that, it's not the majority of, sometimes an artist is like all they are is love songs. So coming from maybe it's Irish music, folk music, there's a lot of other topics as well. But as you said earlier, the healing song, the first song, I don't know if people would qualify it as a love song specifically. It's not like a romance song, but it is about the healing nature of love, of good love, of growth, of love that is about nature, about your community, about loving yourself, about loving every part of your story. It's more of an anthem, I would think. But love is a really big, just current, I would say, throughout most of this whole new album.
I'm just curious to call back to healing. You said you had a demo of it. Did the demo capture the gigantic anthem that it is on the record? I'm just curious.
I think we would all laugh a little bit if we heard it, but I built it with a little like a stomp, a 4-on-the-floor stomp. And then I used reverb. I doubled my voice a bunch of times. I played a pretty, for me, the most aggressive guitar I could play. I had multiple fiddles in there. And it got a lot bigger in the studio, but I think I knew that I kind of wanted to play with this contrast of, dun, 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 like this walk up, and then the verses is kind of like a voice and the guitar. And then when you got to love is healing me now, it was something that surrounded you and kind of overwhelmed you so you could feel it in your chest. I think that was the point. And I would just say, I guess the demo got that across and the band made it that much better. And then
it pointed the right direction, you can at least say.
Yeah, that's like, I think that's what the job of a demo is if you have a particular direction you want to take something in, try to capture that, and then it'll just be the heading that the band will then continue. So
what's it been like playing these songs live? What kind of response have you been getting?
Well, I didn't tour all that much after my first record. I've done more this time, but the phase also that I'm in is I'm doing a lot of like opening slots for people. I don't travel with a big band. I am most comfortable still yet playing acoustic gigs. A lot of times I'm in a duo or a trio. So, for example, Healing is hopefully that same direction, but obviously a pretty different iteration if there's just 2 or 3 of us on stage. But I mean, part of that too is if I could afford to take a whole band on the road and everything, I would love to do that. I do not have the funding to do that. I'm as independent as they come. So I have more songs that more records that I want to record. There's more songs, more ways that I want to develop this blooming era, if you will. I'll borrow from some of our Taylor Overlord, but before we move on to a new era. But yeah, I want to be grateful that I even have the platform and the opportunity to make the art, and no one can take that away from me. This, what I have in my heart, what I have in my head. But figuring out how to navigate the industry of it has been challenging for sure. And a lot of my other independent artist friends are finding it in their own way. A lot of them are out there killing it, and I'm very proud of them. And I don't want to not acknowledge the different things that I have. Like you were saying, playing the Opry even one time is like such a cool thing. There's artists that's all they've wanted to do their whole life. So I never want to take any of those things for granted. But it is, both of my records have had, some stripped back sounds and some very full sounds. And I haven't really had the experience of playing those fuller songs live in the full way. What I love, though, is I love these songs in lots of different versions. So I love performing as a duo. There is something about, there's some really great players I know, a guy named Simon from Sweden. He plays guitar, and he's just, he knows how to like maximize and like tell a story in a very minimalistic way. Because there's only so much you can do, and there's two of you up there, but I bring my fiddle, and that's it feels very authentic, and I feel very strong in that. And hopefully there's the opportunity and the time to do some bigger things in the future.
Yeah, it's neat the way songs can come alive in different ways under different spotlights.
Yeah, I love that.
I see that you have some tour dates coming up, and it looks like you're going to be with Dan Navarro a bit.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
So I just met him recently he was at 30A Writers Festival and then Opelika Writers Festival, and I got to shake his hand in Opelika, and we actually have the same booking agent. We are a very small team, but very, very lucky to be working with a great lady named Laurel. And she has a small but mighty agency herself. And there's been a number of things that have come from, just crossing paths with someone, Beth Nielsen Chapman. I have been, I'm sipping my tea here because I have been working hard to learn a bunch of her material, because I get to open for her this week in a show in the Atlanta area. But then I'm playing in her band, so don't wanna mess up those harmony parts and fiddle parts. No, I'm not playing guitar for her. And I don't do sideman stuff really much, but Beth has been a really cool just champion and connection. And I went to a songwriters retreat last year that she was sort of helming, and that was a really cool experience that I would love to do more of. That was my first time doing that. And anyway, so yeah, some of the dates that are coming up, we have some shows that are me and my act in my own right, but also trying to get in front of other folks. If you like Beth's music or you like Dan's singing and songwriting, it's an honor to play a few of my songs to their fans.
Yeah, it's nice. I mean, it's kind of like you're all in it together. The rising water lifts all ships. So yeah, it's nice that artists who are a little further along can kind of lend a hand.
Yeah, and also like I just know I want to be doing art for the rest of my life, and like it remains to be seen how publicly and how much I can afford to do it at various times. But my goal is, in town you'll get people that are almost like they're always getting pitched to. So their question is, all right, what's the dream? What do you want? And it's always interesting because sometimes there's this idea of like, okay, well, what do they want to hear? How do I make myself the most, you got to pitch yourself. And it's like a competition against every other talented person in town. And it's like, you know what? I am going to do this for the rest of my life. Whether other people hear it or how exactly it's going to happen, that's where the faith comes in. That's where the trust comes in. That's where the hard work comes in. And I don't feel like I have to be on a big, huge stage. It's not like, well, the dream is a stadium tour. The dream is to be the top of the charts. The dream is to make art that I care about and to be able to do that as long as I would like, and to look at people like, I'm so excited that my heroes, Alison Krauss and Union Station, put out a record this year, and it was so inspiring all over again to be like, this is part of the reason why I sing at all, was because of these people. And they're still out here making art, and I just want to be a part of that. Just want to keep that going. It's both a lifestyle and a tradition, you know? We didn't get too much into and I don't know how much longer we have, but as you mentioned, there is a whole book that goes into the whole, I have 2 albums out, I have a book out, and there's a lot of story between all of those things. But I mentioned a few times, Irish music was my first really exposure, and the first thing that really got under my skin, got into my bones, and playing hundreds and hundreds of tunes that you learn that are hundreds of years old, and you don't always know who wrote them. And the idea is like, it speaks to you. And even if it doesn't have words, those melodies and those rhythms, and then you start learning the songs, and that's a whole thing. And there's this whole traditional way of singing them and telling stories. And it's not about necessarily like showmanship or flashy stuff. It's like, this is a sacred calling / like tradition and skill that we are keeping alive. And
yeah, I am intrigued by the Irish traditional music. I mean, I'm like 75% Irish. My family and I, we went to Ireland last fall.
Oh, so fun. Was that your first time?
I had been there in the 90s when I was like in my mid-20s, but it had been a long time since I had been back. But I came back and I was buying like traditional Irish songbooks and stuff like that. It feels so intimidating with all that heritage and history. It's on the list though.
Anywhere you go. I mean, it's interesting because a lot of people assumed that whether they saw our family band or heard a little bit of our music, or you just, someone runs into you and you're a fiddle player in Nashville, and they kind of assume you do bluegrass or country. And I was kind of like, no, not really. Jigs and reels, and they're related. It's just, I recognize that, there's all these other cultures, and even playing the Opry and not really realizing the first time how big of a deal it was because we didn't grow up in that circle. But like watching the whole country music, what's his name? Ken Burns, like the country music documentary, and like just really sinking your teeth into the history and all the stories and all the greats and all of that. Like, that's still a learning curve for me when it comes to like country music. Irish music is what I studied, for many, many years. And not that I'm an expert by any means. I didn't ever live there. It's in my heritage, but it's not like, I wouldn't say that I'm an Irish person, but I'm an Irish American. And being Southside Chicago really does get you far. You do the Irish step dance, you do the traditional Irish music, you learn the songs, then you start going over there. And my mom was able to track down some living relatives and just making that history come alive. I think, certainly don't want to speak for anybody, let alone like all Americans, but I think there's something really special to going back far enough to where you have the lived experience, and or it hits you that we are not from here. We came from all these different places, and we have all of these different cultures and heritages and blah, blah, blah. The religions and the music and all of this stuff, like all the things that, it's a line in Dogwood, everything is made of those who came before. And I think there's something that's a really deep well to draw on. And certainly I think it can help us to not fall into the same pitfalls if we pay attention to lessons that other people have learned. And hopefully we can try to avoid having to learn the same hard lessons over and over. But I have deep, deep, deep love for my Irish heritage, and I will be back there this upcoming January again.
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful. And then the album closes. The one song you didn't write is The Fox, right? That's a traditional Irish song?
Well, the fox is, I don't think particularly Irish in origin, but it definitely is old enough that there's a number of different folk versions. It has been in bluegrass and Irish circles for a while. For some people, it's just something their grandmother sang to them when they were in the crib or something. But Nickel Creek did, they had a live version that they did, mashed it up with a Dylan song, I think. And then some friends of mine, an Irish band called We Banjo 3, they did a version. So if you were at like Milwaukee Irish Fest, like you would hear this song played. And I had learned it at some point and wanted to record it and wanted to have the fiddle tune represented. So that's actually a newer fiddle tune written by a Scottish fiddler named Adam Sutherland, that we tacked on to the end of that song. So that, is just an homage for me, and part of my DNA as an artist to always be including stuff like that.
Yeah, I think the fiddle playing that you do, it definitely evokes Irish. At least that's what I hear.
Do you know a great Chicago fiddler? Does the name Liz Carroll mean anything to you?
I do not know that name.
You gotta look up. You gotta look up
write
Liz
that down.
Carroll, and I think you'll be like, oh, that's her fiddle inspiration. There's definitely others. Winifred Horan from the band Soulless. You send me a little email on the side if you want some traditional Irish music suggestions or like the Irish fusion stuff. Like such cool bands for like since the 90s, the 2000s, cool bands right now. I am coming up to Milwaukee Irish Fest this year. Have you ever been to that?
I've not been to Milwaukee's, but
it's a pretty close jog for you if you're in Chicago.
Absolutely.
And it's in August. It's mid-August, and it's the biggest one in the States. It's one of the biggest ones in the world.
Wow.
Yeah. So there'll be some fun stuff there.
How have I been so ignorant?
No, it's okay.
This is my blood, my people.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Once you go to some of those, I mean, Chicago's got its own stuff as well. The Chicago Irish Fest and like the Gaelic parks. That's where we would go do our little Irish dancing when I was like 7.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, my daughter has a friend that is in the Trinity Irish Dancers, and she's going all over the world.
Trinity was Trinity was the real ones. We were always like, ooh, there's the Trinity, ooh, because they had their cool costumes, and then they had like a touring troupe. Yeah, that's a throwback, man.
Yeah, so we're like, I guess last year they went to Dublin, and then I guess the upcoming big Irish dance festival is going to be Schaumburg. So everyone's kind of like, which is just 15 minutes from O'Hare Airport.
Yeah, it travels, the different competitions and stuff travel around for sure.
Yeah. So.
Well, hey, maybe I'll see you up in Milwaukee.
Yeah, and I mean I've
no pressure.
I got word, and your manager father-in-law told me about a gig coming up in September, which is much closer to me that you haven't officially announced. Yeah. So it's on my short list of shows to get to.
Yeah, that should be a fun one. That one's one of the full shows as opposed to an opening slot. So excited about that, and that's for a great cause. So yeah, we'll definitely it's always exciting when I get to log on to the website and add some more dates. So we've got some more coming up. We'll be up your way before too long.
Yes, and I will do my darndest to make sure I catch you live, because I've got to hear the live interpretations of these songs.
Aw, well, hey, thank you so much for just paying attention, and then when you heard something you liked, just following up, and led to this cool conversation, and let me know how to help point people this way. And same time next week. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. Pick up right where we left off. Same bad time, same bad channel. So
yeah, I'm just glad my Wi-Fi hasn't conked out. It's been being kind of weird lately.
Yeah, so before we sign off, let people know the best places to find out more about you. You got the new album, Blooming. Brand New Day was the debut album. You got the memoir, Unspeakable. What's your online presence?
Yeah, if anybody wants to learn more about any of those things, we've got a brand spanking new website that I made a few months ago myself. So I always tell people if they find a bug, email me and I'll correct it when I can get to it. But yeah, you can have a little shop there with some different merch. You can get the book there as well. The book is in some physical stores. It's also an audio book. So you can look up Unspeakable. The subtitle is Surviving My Childhood and Finding My Voice. You can rent it from your library. And yeah, the website's going to have the upcoming live performances as well. And the other thing, we didn't talk about it too much, but I did mention, if I come and I speak and I do different performances as well. So people can go to my website if they are interested in having me do that or helping raise awareness or raise funds for, these causes that are so close to my heart. And then my socials are all just Jessica Willis Fisher. I'm on Facebook sometimes, Instagram usually, TikTok. I don't know at this point. Sometimes social media just is not my friend. But I just the other day got to record some really fun covers and videos with some other friends of mine. So that's what I have to do to make it fun. And ideally it's the tool that lets people know when I'm going to be in their town or putting out new music so we can all try to stay connected in this crazy world. So yeah.
I love Bands in Town, which is a great app that will let me know when those national acts are gonna come through my town. You're on there, so I'm tracking you.
They're very good friends to the artists. They're actually trying to help the artists out in this day and age. That's how that interfaces with my website, and that's how we get the dates listed. So, love Bands in Town.
Right. All right, well, Jessica, thank you so much for talking. This has just been such an illuminating conversation, and your music is fantastic, and it's just so good to put a spotlight on it because more of the world has to know about this.
Thank you, Tom. That's really sweet, and I would hope that our paths cross again in the future. And thanks for the enthusiasm and all the good vibes for the new record, and lovely to talk about it with you.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
See you next time.
That is so funny. All right. So I'm starting the recording again. Maybe that's going to establish something, but here, I'll send you what's on my screen. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, I see it says started recording.
That's what on my end, before I hit record again, that's what I saw.